Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1205B, and today's date is February 15th, 2017, and the title of the episode is there a hidden message in Michael Flynn's resignation letter? Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, we know that Mike Flynn handed in his letter of resignation. We understand there's a soft coup going on where they're trying to chip away at Trump's administration. They're using a lot of propaganda right now. The deep state, they want control back. They want Trump to fall in line. Now, during this period of the whole controversy with Flynn, Nancy Pelosi was out there and her colleague Elijah Cummings. Well, they were out there and they were reading off information from this Twitter account, and they thought it was Michael Flynn's Twitter account. They didn't know it was fake. And the Twitter account read as follows: "While I accept full responsibility for my actions, I feel it is unfair that I have been made the sole scapegoat for what happened." Now the second tweet. In a second tweet he said, "But if a scapegoat is what's needed for this administration to continue to take this great nation forward, I am proud to do my duty." Now, Nancy Pelosi was out there reading this, discussing what a scapegoat is, and she finally found out that these were fake accounts. They were created. They were not Michael Flynn's accounts. And she went on to say that, what do you mean these are fake? These aren't his Twitter accounts? This is not what he said? And the whole thing was a joke on her. But what we're seeing here is that the corporate media is out there and they're using propaganda right now to finish off the Trump administration. But when we go underneath all of this, we really see that there's problems in the White House. There are these leakers that are leaking a lot of information. And House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes said that those who leaked the contents of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's phone calls belong in jail. That's 9 leakers that all belong in jail, he said. They broke the law. And he went to look to see if there was a warrant for them to tap the phones from the FBI. And there was no warrant whatsoever. To listen, he said, to an American phone call, you have to go to court. You have to fill out paperwork. And right now, he cannot find any. He says it doesn't exist. And what we're seeing right now is that those individuals, they leaked information from the White House. This is a national security issue. And they violated the rights of this individual, because they need to get a warrant. Now, of course, everyone's looking at this saying, well, he shouldn't have been having these phone calls. But yes, he shouldn't have been, but they obtained this illegally. And I hate to say this, going back in time when we had the transition teams of all different presidencies, they all did the same thing. They knew they were coming into office. The Electoral College already decided that, yes, this is the president. The teams already said, okay, these are going to be part of my transition team. Start making contacts. And we can see that most of the individuals, most of the presidencies going back in time, well, they did the same exact thing. But no one called them out on this. But Michael Flynn, he gave in his resignation letter. And I don't think he should have done this at this point. I think they should have said, you know something? Let's go up against this, because it looks like they folded too quickly on this. And after examining Flynn's letter, 2 glaring things stand out. First, his strong rebuke of the liberal media over their characterization of the events leading up to his resignation. Flynn describes his calls with Russian ambassador as standard practice in any transition of this magnitude. Even though the liberal media was incorrectly suggested such communications violated the Logan Act, which the FBI and Justice Department officials insist is wrong. So right off the bat, they're saying that, yeah, this doesn't hold water. Second, General Flynn destroys the failed Obama legacy on foreign policy, which has been totally ignored by the media. In his letter, Flynn explains that President Trump has reoriented American foreign policy in fundamental ways to restore America's leadership position in the world. He said the Obama legacy is one of total failure, which Americans rejected. And this is why they voted for Trump. And he's right. And one other thing to point out here is that, remember, the elite, the central banks, they're running the country. They hold all the cards. They hold all the keys. They want Trump to fall in line. They want war with Russia. They don't want him making peace with Russia. And they're trying to force him into a position where he gives. That's what this is all about. If he doesn't give in, they're going to get rid of him. Now, the New York Times is pushing this quite hard. They put out a news article, and the news article says Trump campaign aides had repeated contacts with Russian intelligence. Now, of course, when you read the headline, you go, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And this is why Flynn left. And now there's others that are involved in this. But something very important about all of this is that they didn't find any evidence of collusion. Now, if you look at the bottom of their article, close to the bottom, it's kind of buried in there. And they said that there are no facts, there is no evidence. The FBI supports this. So when you look at this, you would say, well, wait a minute. Is this article based on anything? No, it's not. It's not even based on facts. The facts are nothing was found, there's no evidence, and the FBI confirms this. And Aria Fletcher says, well, why does the headline say Trump campaign aides had reported contacts with Russian intelligence? Shouldn't the headline actually say, officials say no evidence of cooperation between Trump campaign and Russia? But you can see how the corporate media spins all of this, and they do it on purpose. Remember, this is propaganda. When you see these type of headlines, this is propaganda. I wonder if Google and Facebook and the rest are striking these down saying this is complete fake news. Most likely not. Now, Russia is out there and they're saying, well, they've never contacted any Russian spies that we know of. And the person that they're saying that they're looking at is Mr. Manafort, saying, listen, I do business in Russia. I speak to many individuals in Russia. The businessmen in Russia don't tell me that, hey, I'm a Russian intelligence agent. They don't have a sign on them saying, hi, I'm a Russian intelligence agent. Because as we know, in Russia and Ukraine, a lot of the intelligence officials, well, they're deeply embedded in society. And again, he has no knowledge of this. Now, WikiLeaks is out there saying, you know, the calls from Flynn, those should be public, and we should be able to hear exactly what this is all about if this is the route we're going. And of course, most likely they don't want to release these because it's going to show that nothing has happened, just as the FBI, other government officials already reported that there was no collusion. So again, this whole thing was completely fake. Now we know that Judge Ropart, when he was looking at Trump's immigration policies, he said that, you know, where's your evidence? Where is your evidence that terrorism is coming from these 7 different countries? And you have to remember that the FBI, CIA, they were creating these patsies to scare us into believing that terrorism was here in this country, that we had to go to the Middle East and fight terrorism. That was the whole point of it. And what happened as time went on is they wanted to bring immigrants into the country at the same time, and anyone they can get, because they were trying to pass the TPP. So there were a lot of agendas going on. We also had the elections coming up. We also had Obamacare. A lot of these individuals were exempt. And we can see there was a lot of agendas associated with this. So there were 2 agendas going on. So in the beginning phases, They were using terrorism because they needed more forces out in the Middle East because they were losing control of Libya, Lebanon, Iraq. They wanted to get into Syria. They wanted to bring more troops into Syria. They wanted to bring more troops into Iraq. And this is why they were pushing the idea of terrorism so hard. And what happened was the corporate media, they stopped reporting on a lot of all of what was going on because they got instructions from the elite, the central bankers, from Obama, that we want the illegals to come in. And if we say that some of them might be terrorists, this is not going to work out very well. So you're going to have to just ignore some of the things that are going on. Even though there's other agencies that are setting up patsies, we just have to ignore that right now. Except the big ones. They can't ignore, like the San Bernardino shooting and all those other things. But the smaller ones, they completely ignored. And Trump came up and said, listen, nope, I have a report here. There are 72 terror convictions against people originating from the 7 countries. And of course, Judge Robart, said there's no such evidence whatsoever. Well, Trump proved that, yes, there is evidence because there's a Senate committee report that says that, yes, this is true. The Center of Immigration says, yes, this is true. And the mainstream media, well, during this whole period of time, challenged those assertions. And here are some of the articles that they were putting out. Politico, Donald Trump wrong. The media is not reporting on terrorism anymore. PBS, Trump's list of underreported terror doesn't back up claim. MSNBC, Trump manufactures a media cover-up of terrorist attacks. Seattle Times, Trump's list of underreported terror doesn't back up claim. Now, keep in mind, these weren't commentaries. These were news reports. So, he was right on both counts. 1, the report was true. 2, by the media coming out saying they didn't know anything about these 72 terrorist attacks, they didn't report on it. So the media was not reporting on terror. Because you can see what was going on. Now we know a lot of this was not terror. We know these were patsies. But now this is working against them. It's not working for them. And it's actually pushing them into a corner when you look at the situation here. Out in North Korea, we understand that the United States, the central bankers, the elites, now Trump is saying, listen, North Korea needs to rein this in. They can't be testing these missiles and just firing them off. Only the United States can do this. Only the United States can fire a ballistic missile into the Pacific Ocean. And that's not considered a provocation. If North Korea does it, well, that's a provocation. And North Korea, well, they rejected the United Nations Security Council's condemnation of its recent missile test launch, citing a sovereign right to such tests, that North Korea has every right to defend themselves. That's very interesting, because I remember John Kerry out there says the people of Ukraine have every right to defend themselves. They use that all the time. And now North Korea is using it against the elite, saying we have every right to defend ourselves. Because if you noticed, John Kerry, the elite, the Obama administration, they used that phrase a lot during his term. Well, we have every right to defend ourselves. And now we can see that other countries are doing the same exact thing. We see that Trump is out there and he's saying to Russia, you must return Crimea. Now, during a call with the Kremlin, with Putin, Trump never mentioned or raised the issue of Crimea at all. Not a word. And this is very interesting. First of all, Russia's saying that, listen, Crimea voted themselves away. 97% of the people said, listen, we don't want to be part of Ukraine. We know this is a coup d'etat and we're not going to be a part of it, and we're voting ourselves away. Marine Le Pen understands that there was a coup d'etat and Crimea was part of Russia. And we can see that Russia didn't steal anything. The United States government central bankers went into Ukraine and they pushed an agenda because they thought they were going to capture Ukraine, capture the southeastern area, Crimea, have the port on the Black Sea, control the pipelines to Europe. They thought all of this was going to happen. And remember, right after the coup d'etat, Biden and Kerry, Well, Biden brought in his son to be on the board of directors of the natural gas company there. John Kerry had his roommate put onto the board of directors. And you can see this was all planned from the beginning. Now, Russia's spy ship, it is about 30 miles away from the East Coast, still in international waters. And we can see right now that it's sailing up and down the East Coast. Now, we see that the corporate media is making a very big deal about this, but you have to remember, the United States government central bankers have warships that are sailing in the Black Sea close to Russia. They have tanks, military personnel pushed up to the line of the Russian border. Here we have one ship off the coast, and the corporate media is making the biggest deal that you've ever seen. Now, all of this is to push the idea that Russia is coming to get us. Because you can already see out in the corporate media that there was another unsafe flyby in the Black Sea. Now, Russia has denied the claims, saying that this has never happened. And the U.S. Defense Department claimed that several Russian jets buzzed a U.S. Navy ship 3 times on February 10th. And according to the Russians, they're saying, nope, the flight was conducted and being conducted over neutral waters of the Black Sea in accordance with international rules and safety requirements. And we see right now, all of this is to push the idea that Russian is being very aggressive. We can see they're back on this whole thing. Ever since the propaganda came out against Flynn, ever since the cyber attack during the elections, which never happened, and we can see all of this is fake up to this point. Now the U.S. is saying that Russia deployed new missiles in a treaty violation. Now, listen to the headline that Reuters put out. U.S. believes Russia deployed new missile in treaty violation. They have no facts. This is, again, propaganda. And of course, Russia is saying this is absolutely ridiculous, that they have not violated the 1987 INF Treaty. And that stands for Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces. And they're saying these allegations are untrue. And where did you get this from? So when we look a little bit closer, we see the allegations were supported by the Pentagon, and U.S. Senator John McCain called on the Trump administration to respond to the reported violations. So who do you think set all of this up? Most likely, it had to do with McCain, because we can see what he's doing out in Ukraine. This is the year of the offensive. Here he is trying to push Trump into a decision of what they should do with Russia right now. And this is what is happening. They don't want Trump making nice with Putin. They're trying to convince him that Russia is a threat. And we're going to see this continue on throughout this year, because their agenda is to bring on a war. They want a war. We know what's coming, the collapse of the system. And like I said, we already got the signal from Yellen. Don't blame the Fed. So they want a blame on Trump. They're going to need more than that. They're going to need a war for distraction. And they're going to try to push this. We see out in Syria, the Islamic State is carrying out several drone strikes against the Syrian Arab army right now. And it looks like they're using drones. Now, the other thing that they're doing is that in Iraq, the Iraqi forces noticed that the Islamic State, they're using tanks. Now, when they're looking at the tanks, these aren't tanks that they captured. They're being supplied tanks right now, which shows us that supplies are filtering in to the Islamic State. And if you notice, there's a big Islamic State buildup in Afghanistan because the Taliban is taking control of Afghanistan. Remember, wherever the United States government central bankers, wherever they need to take control or recontrol the area, they're going to push the Islamic State into that area. Just like when all the talks were falling apart in Libya, they had the Islamic State move into that area, which gives the excuse of the United States government central bankers, it gives them the excuse of going into that country and bombing. And we're getting word from Russia that the U.S. is not coordinating strikes in Palmyra. They're not going after the Islamic State together. The United States is bombing on their own, which means they're helping the Islamic State. And during this period, we're seeing the Islamic State, they're gaining territory for some reason, which is quite odd. Actually, it really isn't odd because we saw this back in 2013, 2014, going into 2015, where when the Islamic State came out and the United States started to bomb, we saw the Islamic State increase their territory over this period of time. Now, we understand that Russia, the Syrian forces, they've been pushing back the Islamic State. They've been taking more and more territory away from them. We understand that the deep state, the elite, the central bankers, they're pushing a war with Russia. And they haven't forgotten about their goal to get rid of Assad. Something very interesting just came up where the Defense Department is considering proposing sending conventional ground combat forces into northern Syria for the first time as part of an effort to speed up the fight against the Islamic State. Well, we know this is not what this is about. We know that this is to trap Trump into a war with Russia. They're telling him it's for the Islamic State, but they're going to be sending conventional ground troops into Syria to help out the moderate rebels and to remove Assad. And we can see right now that this is being pushed, and this might lead to the kickoff of World War III. And this is something that we need to look at because we can see right now Syria has not invited the United States in. They said they will allow the United States in if they coordinate with Syria and Russia. So far, the United States has not coordinated. Now, Trump needs to take that next step. He needs to coordinate with Russia and Syria because if he sends in the ground troops without doing this, we know right off the bat they're not going after the Islamic State. They're going after Russia. They'll be going after the Syrian troops. They'll be getting ready to go after Assad. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.